Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP coming in from Melbourne, Australia. Let me tell you, it's cold, it's wet, but doesn't matter because we've got a VIP guest with us. We got Robert Zapata from Cannibal and the Headhunters. How are you today, Robert?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing, Plastic?
We're doing fantastic, and we welcome Nathan Liu and Daniel Costin. Say your famous line, Daniel.
I'm Daniel Costin, and you're not, and I'm happy to be here on Popstar Mania.
That's it. This show's taken off leaps and bounds. Now, Robert, you got some fantastic news for everyone out there in the world, and we'll let you tell everyone about it. And you've got a lot of stuff to show us too, which is memorable.
Yeah, well, I
Can't wait.
got a couple of things to show you. A couple things. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me on your show. So, what number is this now? 2000 and something? I mean,
We're about 1100. We're about
oh
1100,
my,
and we're just going
oh my
along
God,
nicely.
oh my God, yeah, that's incredible. Well, thank you for inviting us out. And hello, Daniel. Hello, Nathan. It's good to meet you two guys. Yeah, well, what's been happening with us lately, especially this year being 2024, this is the year of our 60th anniversary. So this whole year we've been celebrating our 60th anniversary, and we're still above ground doing our thing, you know. Uh, and there's also been the last 2 years we've been working on a movie that's going to be called the Na 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 Boys, and we finally kind of finished everything up, the trailer. So it's being pitched right now, and we have some interest with a few movie companies. And today's is August 1st, right? Yeah, it is. Yeah. So today, a lot of stuff got submitted to a couple of different movie companies, and we're going to be having a meeting shortly about how all this is going to take place. But it's looking really good, and I'm just really happy about it because one, uh, I've been asked through the decades to do something like this with various people, and it just never came together. But with these particular people that I hooked up with, James Gutierrez and Kenneth Castillo, it's really just kind of steamed full, straight ahead, and it's been nothing but positive. So we're looking forward to that as well.
The movie's related to the Beatles and the band, the history of the band. Just tell me the outline of it.
The outline of it really focuses around Cannibal. One, him growing up. A lot of people didn't know that he was gay, and so as a little kid growing up, some of the kids, and you know how mean kids could be in school, uh, they were kind of sort of picking on him because they knew he was somewhat different, and he was still a boy. So they got into a fight with this one kid, and he bit a chunk of his ear off, and they nicknamed him Cannibal, and that stuck with him through his whole musical career. And so that's how we got that his nickname. But he basically was. And he kind of had a rough childhood. I don't want to get too much into that because it's just sensitive area. But he had a rough childhood growing up with his aunt who raised him. But the area where he lived, at his age around 5 or 6 years old, there was this lady who owned the apartment complex that he lived in, and she sang. She sang a lot of Mexican style music, and he was kind of drawn to that. So he would go and sit in her front room and listen to these two women sing. Uh, Norma Jean's mother, and I can't recall her name right now, but the other person was Edie Gourmet. So Edie Gourmet, a lot of people may not know, she didn't just sing, American language music. She also sang a lot of Spanish music as well, and that's what inspired Cannibal into getting into singing. So it was sort of Edie Gourmet and Norma Jean's mother who inspired Frankie to get into entertainment, and so he basically started messing with singing when he was 5, 6 years old. So, but when Frankie basically was about 14 years old, he had his first group called the Rhythm Playboys. And that's where he initially first started. This is way before Cannibal and Headers even existed. So for the Rhythm Playboys, he started singing, doing neighborhood shows like at the Little Union and American Legion halls and those type of places. And his manager at the time, who was Billy Cardenas, decided, hey, he saw a little something a little sparky in Cannibal. He had really good stage presence, so you could notice it right away, and decided to push him as a solo artist. So they auditioned and listened to other background singers to include, because back in that time you had Smokey Robinson and the Miracles and all that kind of style of groups back then. So they were putting background singers behind Frankie. This is before he had his own band. So it was just a vocal group when it initially started, doing a lot of doo-wop and some early R&B material. It was at that point where it started to change, where they wanted to basically push it as a solo artist with background singers. They recorded the song Frankie recorded the song in 1964. And it was in the can for about 8-9 months before they released it in 65, because they were trying to come up with a name. They had Cannibal. Okay, what can we put with that? So KRLA radio station here in LA was playing Frankie's, or gonna play Frankie's material, but they weren't ready to pass it on yet because they didn't come up with the rest of the name of the band. So they had a party for a lot of the DJs, and there was this one DJ by the name of Dick Moreland who was sitting at the table. And Eddie Davis, who was the CEO of Rampart Records back then, had mentioned to Dick Moreland, hey, we have a new artist here. They introduced Dick to Cannibal. And they said, but we're trying to come up with the rest of the name for the group. We have Cannibal, and we're trying to fit something else in there. It was Dick Moreland who came up with and the Headhunters. So that's how the group basically got the name at that point, Cannibal and the Headhunters. So we thank Dick Moreland for that great idea.
How did they end up, Robert, opening for the Beatles? Go into that and then show us your memorabilia.
Well, what happened with that is that in 1965, there was 2 calls that were made, and the first one was the group, the vocal group, to perform with and open up for the Rolling Stones. So that was May 7th of 1965 in Birmingham, Alabama, at Legion Field, and it was the Rolling Stones. In fact, I got the poster. Well, no, actually, this is the original poster on the layout and what it looked like, but I got this from Mike Love. Because Mike Love was on the show as well. It was the Beach Boys, the Righteous Brothers, the Rolling Stones, Cannibal and the Headhunters, Sonny James and Marty Robbins that were on the show. So, and I actually got this from Mike Love. Besides opening for the Stones during this time, throughout the years we've had different opportunities to open up for the Beach Boys and the Righteous Brothers, and it was 3 months after this particular show that the offer came in to Eddie Davis for Cannibal. Brian Epstein said he wanted the Na 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 Boys on the second American tour. So they had an option to do the Beatles tour or the Motown Dick Clark tour back then. And of course, Cannibal picked the Beatles tour, and that's how they got on it. And so it basically was a short 2-week run from August 15th of 65 through August 31st. From Shea Stadium to the Hollywood Bowl to the Cow Palace up in San Francisco, and that was it. Pretty much that. Back in '65, the Beatles had a fan club. I'm sure you're aware of, and they used to pass out these little fan club cards that had a picture of them on one side, and the official Beatles Fan Club of America on the other side. Right today for membership details. They put all the stuff in there for fans to do. And on the way back from Shea Stadium to the Hollywood Bowl, Frankie had gotten one of the cards, Cannibal, and went in the back of the plane and asked the guys to sign it. So these are the actual signatures of all 4 Beatles back from 1965.
Wow. Bring that right in, Robert, if you can. Just put it higher. Just lift it up higher. That's it. Hold it right there.
That's keeper.
I'm wondering if they even sign their signature still like this, because this is from 1965 when they were in their 20s. They may be a little shaky now. Who knows? I don't know. At least Paul and Ringo.
Robert, it's very hard to get all 4 of them at once. That's what I heard.
Very hard. And John Lennon never really signed his entire name. If you notice, it just says John. doesn't have his last name.
I'd just
Thanks.
say you got an amazing collection there, and all this goes into the story. Now you got to tell me about a book. You're working on a book. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, it's about my life story, the good and the bad of it. Let's say that. You know, and deeply talks about Cannibal, because I've been the drummer for this band for going to be 58 years now. So it's just incredible. You know, I feel like Charlie Watts. You know, he was the drummer for the Stones through this whole time, and I miss him. I love that cat, but you know, I look at myself, it's kind of like that. I've been just involved with the whole aspect of this group since I was 15 years old, and I'm in my 70s now, so it's been a little while. You know?
One thing I'll ask about Cannibal and the Headhunters, they were so unique, as you know. They were this amazing mix of early rock and roll, showmanship. I always think of Little Richard and the R&B that was happening across the country, especially in the early 60s, but very much from that part of California, from those neighborhoods. It was all kind of together. It was and way ahead of what was happening in terms of the mix of culture. I mean, as you guys were together 3-4 years before Arthur Lee and Love and some of the other groups that really started expanding the boundaries of what it meant to be this or that or the other. What was it about Cannibal and the Headhunters that made them so unique and had this unique, just vibrant sound?
A lot of that was Cannibal himself. He explored different styles of music. When he first initially started off with him and a background singers, he was doing nothing but doo-wop. You know, stuff like Shaboom and Buzz 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 and those kind of tunes, you know. And slowly he just shifted into more of the rock and roll bluesy type thing, and then just R&B as well. So he died when he was 49. So in his late 20s, 30s, and early 40s, basically we were doing doo-wop, rock, and R&B soul. So we covered those genres. Even our show today that we mix that doo-wop, rock, and R&B soul. And I tell a little story of the Beatles tour, because Frankie told me Paul treated him so kindly and was just great with him. Yeah, I would tell Cannibal, you had somewhat of a crush on him, right? He goes, yeah, I did. I'm sure you did. but nevertheless, is that I mean, you can imagine just people in general just got drawn to Paul. But he said Paul was always really kind and nice to him. So in our show, I say a little something about that experience that Frankie had, and we pay a tribute to a lot of the songwriting of Paul McCartney, and we do Live and Let Die and some of the other stuff that Paul wrote. So we embed some of that stuff into our show as well.
And wasn't it Paul that actually invited Cannibal and Headhunters to join the tour? I think I had heard that Paul actually saw you guys on Hullabaloo.
Yeah, and he heard the song first, because you got to remember when the Beatles first started off, when they were doing cover songs, they were getting a lot of their harmonies, the way they built their harmonies and triads, they were getting a lot of their vocal harmonies from girls groups like the Shirelles and those type of people. And that's why their harmonies were so tight, where they were impeccable, you know. But yeah, and he basically told Brian, I want the Na 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 Boys on our tour. So that's how that happened. And Eddie Davis got the call, and Frankie was just completely stoked about it. And some of the background singers said, we want to go on this Motown tour, but you know, Frankie being the leader of the group and controlling what was going on there. I mean, he was the focus of the band anyway. He was the shot caller. Of course, they did the Beatles tour. Yeah, the biggest hit that Cannibal and the Headhunters had was Land of a Thousand Dances, and there was a couple of others that followed, Now Ninny Now and Don't Let Her Go, which we still kind of do in the show. But you know, back then, obviously, we didn't have the management and the push that the Beatles had, so we were lacking a little bit back then, and it was really rough, especially like Dana was mentioning earlier, in the area that we grew up in. Back then, you know, and maybe not so much now, but back then it was really tainted for gang activity and that kind of stuff, you know. But it was a hotbed of musicians that played so many different styles and embedded rock with some of the Spanish music that was going on, like what Los Lobos does now. Los Lobos, Cannibal, and the Headhunters, those groups, we all grew up in the same area. We're all from the Boyle Heights area. So, it's that was an incredible thing, but it was rough, really hard to get some of the record people to come from the west side to cross that 6th Street bridge just to see what's going on over on the east side. So this movie thing that we're doing, I wanted to call it Crossing the 6th Street Bridge, but I got voted out, and it's going to be called the Na 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 Boys.
Absolutely, Robert. The Shea Stadium concert was one of the biggest shows at the time, and I think all of you use the house PA. And the thing that I never knew was, well, I suspected a couple of songs on the, I don't know, the bootleg Shea Stadium. The Beatles went back into the studio and just dubbed in a new version of some of these songs. And then later, I think it was just a couple of years ago, they released Shea Stadium as it was. And they didn't have to release it the way that they did. And that was very bizarre. But I guess my only question is, a sea of crazy fans wanting the Beatles and a house system with no monitors and just screaming. And
you can imagine what the audio of that. We did several shows with Denny Lane. Now, Denny Lane did a number of concerts with us, and we were on tour quite a bit. And I had asked him if there was any way, because Paul was helping him or starting to help him put a book together. And I asked him, if ever you get a chance to chat with Paul, that I would like to see if I can get one time to listen to the audio of what Cannibal and the Headhunters sounded like back then, because the King Curtis band backed up the group at that point for those particular shows. And Paul had replied that he will never release those audios because they're absolutely terrible. So on some of the songs that you just mentioned that the Beatles did, I have their whole set list right here. Everything that happened that day happened exactly like this. This is Shea Stadium, August 15th, 1965. Induction of the King Curtis Band. I mean, introducing the King Curtis Band. The King Curtis Band plays the national anthem with an unknown vocalist and audience participation. And then WABC's cousin Brucey Morrow welcomes the audience and introduces Murray the K. Murray the K introduces this discotheque dancers, and they do a medley of songs. It's Not Unusual, Downtown, Can't Buy Me Love, and I'm Telling You Now, and Hard Day's Night. After that performance, cousin Brucey introduces Scott Ross of WBIZ Radio in Long Island, New York. Ross introduces the King Curtis Band. The King Curtis Band performs What I Say, The Branch, Soul Twist. After that performance, cousin Brucey addresses the audience and introduces WMCA's Frank Stickle. Now, Stickle introduces WMCA, the good guys. Each good guy introduces themselves. Then they harmonize on a couple of Beatles songs, like what is it? That's it. Yeah, they just harmonize on a couple of Beatles songs. That's it. WMCA's does a jingle quite well, actually, and then they introduce Cannibal and the Headhunters, who plays Out of Sight and Now Ninny Now. Cannibal and the Headhunters continue The Way You Do the Things You Do, Land of a Thousand Dances. Cousin Brucey introduces DJ Hal Jackson. Jackson introduces Marvin Gaye. It doesn't list the songs that Marvin Gaye performed, but after his performance, cousin Brucey introduces Brenda Holloway, who does Shake and Satisfaction, and I Can't Help Myself, and You Can Cry on My Shoulder, and When I'm Gone. So she did a number of songs that day. Then after that performance, cousin Brucey introduces WABC DJ Charlie Greer, and he says a few words to the audience. After that, Cousin Brucey introduces Sounds Incorporated, America from the West Side Story, and Fingertips in a William Tell Overture, an instrumental. In the Hall of the Mountain King is what they play. After that, Brian Epstein introduces Ed Sullivan. Ed Sullivan introduces the Beatles tuning up and cutting up. So they're tuning the guitars and making little background noises on their instruments. And once they're ready to go, their set list consists of Twist and Shout, She's a Woman, I Feel Fine, Dizzy Miss Lizzie, Ticket to Ride, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, Can't Buy Me Love, Babies in Black, Act Naturally, Hard Day's Night, Help, and I'm Down. And at the end of their set, they bow to the audience and Beatles leave the stage.
It's been amazing having you, telling us about the movie, telling us about Cannibal and the Headhunters, also telling us about your fabulous book, going through your memorabilia, but most importantly, telling us the outline of the Shea Stadium. I've never heard that in my life. Am I right, Nathan and Daniel?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. And if you don't mind, Plastic, I would like to mention to your listeners out there that on October 3rd in Scottsdale, Arizona, we're going to be doing a 60th anniversary concert at Casino Arizona in Scottsdale, Arizona. So you can go to Ticketmasters.com. If you're out in Arizona, come on out and see us and join the party.
We want to thank you so much on Popstar Mania. And let me tell you, it was just fascinating. Do you agree, Nathan and Daniel?
Absolutely.